Hey, how you doing? Hope everything's good on your end. Today we're going to talk about something fresh in the Rainbow Six Siege world, the brand new update Y10S3.2. And trust me, this one might look like just another routine patch at first glance, but once you actually look at the changes and what they mean in real matches, it opens up a lot of interesting conversations about balance, strategy, map flow, and the overall direction Ubisoft seems to be nudging the game toward right now. I know some people see a small update and think, okay, maybe just a couple bug fixes, nothing major, but even the little tweaks can ripple out and change the way a full round feels. And that's where Siege is always fascinating, because it's a game where 1 second, one gadget, one misplaced reinforcement can totally flip momentum. So let's start with the release itself, because I know timing always matters. The patch dropped on September 30th, 2025, and for a lot of players that meant maintenance downtime across platforms before the servers came back up with this version ready to go. If you're on console, you probably saw it listed as build 1.00.1116, while Ubisoft labels it in their patch notes as update 3.11. PC players obviously just got it as part of the Y10S3.2 deployment. Regardless of your platform, everybody now has the same balance adjustments and fixes rolled in. It wasn't one of those staggered releases where one system waits behind another. This was all simultaneous, which is good because Siege's crossplay ecosystem really depends on consistency. Now, the headline change, the part that people are going to feel immediately, is what Ubisoft did to Denari. If you've been around Siege for even a couple of seasons, you know how new operators usually go. They arrive strong, players test every angle, and then Ubisoft gently pulls back to make sure things don't tilt too far. Denari's TRIP connector has been one of those gadgets that looked manageable at first, but in practice it created some very tough choke scenarios, especially for attackers who didn't have the right utility ready at the right time. The reactivation delay adjustment sounds simple on paper. It now takes a full second for the connector to reactivate after its line of sight is broken by an operator, gadget, or object. But that 1 second difference matters a ton in Siege's pacing. Before this change, players could be punished almost instantly when trying to cross, making it feel oppressive. With this tweak, you now have a slightly wider window for counterplay. Maybe that's a Zofia stun to force the gadget down, maybe it's a smoke cover, maybe it's just coordinating with your squad to time that crossing. Either way, it moves Denari from feeling like a brick wall to feeling more like a tactical obstacle you can actually outsmart. And that's a good sign, because Ubisoft has clearly been listening to feedback. A lot of players were saying that the gadget felt too sticky, that it limited creativity, and Siege thrives when you've got options. This doesn't delete Denari's role, not at all. She's still got real utility for locking down lanes, but it forces her players to think a little more, and it gives opponents that breathing space to adapt. If you think about the history of Siege gadgets, this is the kind of refinement we've seen over and over, like how Capcom traps were once everywhere until they slowed him down, or how Smoke's gas radius was adjusted to be fairer. Denari is just the latest in that balancing tradition. But beyond Denari, this update really shines in its long list of bug fixes. And here's the thing. I know some people hear bug fixes and their eyes glaze over, but for a competitive tactical shooter, this stuff is essential. The dual front map in particular got a huge sweep. When Ubisoft released it, people enjoyed the layout, but they immediately ran into all kinds of odd little problems. Crates not aligned, that collision issues where you get stuck, drones floating weirdly, shutters or vents not lining up properly, objects you could clip through, all those tiny things that break immersion, and more importantly, mess with competitive integrity. With this patch, the dev team went in and hammered through those issues one by one. Now, when you roll your drone, it's not going to get stuck on some invisible ledge, and when you're aiming down a corridor, you're not going to see some box floating slightly off the ground. That kind of polish really adds up. Siege has always been a game where map knowledge is king, so when the map itself has flaws, it undermines the whole experience. Fixing dual front means players can finally start building more consistent strats without worrying about whether some corner is bugged. Operators and gadgets also got love outside of Denari. For example, Rauora's Diome panel launcher had an issue where it wasn't deploying properly in certain situations, which made his kit unreliable. That's fixed now, meaning Rauora players can trust their ability again, and teams can plan around it without fear of a random failure. Valkyrie also got a notable fix. Her black eye cams had a bug where they could lose connection incorrectly, and if you've ever relied on Valk for intel, you know that's infuriating. Having that connection stable again is a big win for both casual and ranked players, because Valkyrie cams are still one of the most iconic pieces of utility in Siege. On top of that, Ubisoft addressed a bunch of user experience quirks. If you've been grinding ranked, you might have noticed de-anonymization issues in the after-action report. That's the screen that shows up after a match ends, and if it's accidentally revealing info it shouldn't, that's a problem in a game where anonymity helps prevent harassment. That's fixed now, along with notification ordering bugs, missing text placeholders that just made menus feel broken, and even the view moderated chat button being inconsistent. It's not flashy, but think about how many hours we spend just in menus between rounds, in lobbies, scrolling through operators. All those tiny fixes make the overall quality feel sharper. Audio fixes also deserve a mention because sound in Siege isn't just flavor, it's critical. If you can't trust footsteps, if a gunshot is muffled in the wrong spot, you can make the wrong call and lose a round. This update corrected duplicated footstep SFX and some muffled gunshot sounds that were happening in map areas. That's the kind of detail casual players might not even consciously notice, but competitive players will immediately appreciate. Every second of audio clarity matters when someone might be crouch walking up a stairwell to flank you. Now here's the bigger picture. What does this all mean for the meta and for the game going forward? Well, first, Denari's Nerf is going to open up attack options. Expect to see more aggressive pushes on maps where she was previously locking down long sightlines. Teams won't have to dedicate as much utility just to handle her, which means you can carry more flexibility, maybe leaning into extra explosives or drones instead. Defenders who relied heavily on her to stall attacks will now have to supplement with other area denial like Aruni gates or even traditional traps like capguns. It redistributes the load rather than leaving one operator feeling mandatory. Second, dual fronts fixes will encourage more play on that map, and you'll probably notice it in map rotation preferences. When a new map has too many bugs, people tend to ban it or avoid it, but now that it's more stable, you'll see it pop up more often in ranked. That means strats are going to evolve quickly. Streamers and pro players will start showcasing new angles and setups, and the community will follow. If you're trying to stay competitive, this is a great moment to spend time learning dual front properly because the playing field has been leveled. Third, all the little fixes across operators and UI are signs that Ubisoft is paying close attention not just to balance, but to the overall polish of Siege. After 10 years of updates, it's natural for a game to accumulate technical debt, small bugs that pile up and drag down the experience. This patch is proof that they're still combing through those details. That's good news for everyone, because it shows commitment to keeping Siege healthy, instead of just focusing on flashy seasonal content. What's interesting too is that Ubisoft didn't make sweeping balance changes across multiple operators here. This patch is lean, very focused. That tells me they're probably reserving bigger shifts for the next seasonal drop, where they'll want to hype people up with larger adjustments and maybe another operator rework. For now, Y10S 3.2 feels like a maintenance phase, a chance to tidy up the house before inviting more guests. And honestly, that's the right move. Siege is a complex enough game that it benefits from these stabilizing patches. I want to take a second to think about what players will actually feel in the first week after this patch. You're going to notice Denari players adjusting their style, maybe trying to pre-aim more aggressively to compensate for the reactivation delay. You'll see attackers being bolder, especially with operators like Iana or Ashe who like to hit tight timings. You'll notice dual front being less frustrating, drones making it further without glitching, maybe even some creative new flanks. You'll notice the sound being cleaner when you're tracking footsteps around corners. All of these little things add up to rounds that feel smoother and Class is more reliable.